Hello all, in this how-to video I'm going to show you how you can manage equipment in Comma CMMS. Um, the first thing you have to do is you have to go to the equipment and tools module, which you access by clicking on the assets button over here and then going to equipment and tools. When you do that, then you get to the search console page, which is a familiar site for Comma CMMS users. Um, and when you first start the system and before you add any equipment, your equipment list will be empty. So if I was to press the show button here on a brand new system, you will see no results on this area here. Actually, I'm going to do that. In this system we already actually have some equipment, but we have no tools. So if I click tools and then click show, this is basically what you would see. The no results label here is what you would see for equipment when you have all the search console default options selected when we first start the system. Like I said, this system already has some equipment in it. So if I select equipment, which is, by the way, as you saw, the default search option for the search console in equipment and tools. So you got equipment showing here, so only equipment, and then you click show. In this system you'll see quite a lot of equipment that is already defined. Every equipment has a unique ID, and this is also how you go to the display page of a certain or a given equipment. Then this is the target functional location. An equipment, when you have the equipment, it's going to a certain position on the field. It can be in storage, but it was bought to be used in a certain position on the field. So this is what tells the system where each equipment will go, or where each equipment is. It depends whether it's in service or in storage at a given time. Then also on the list you can see the brand, you can see the model, and you can see the current status of the equipment, also what type it is. And the reason why this is in here is because this list, and basically the equipment module, as you can see up here, is an equipment and tools module. So this list is used to show both equipment and tools, and this item here shows you what this component is. As I said, and as I showed in the beginning, there are no tools in this system. So every item on this list will actually show this gear here, because everything is in equipment. If you hover over it, you'll see that it is an equipment. This is the plant name for our demo, and this is the quantity in stock. If you have something like this is because the quantity in stock is below the minimum amount, but we'll go through that later as we go through the equipment module how to. So the first really thing that you have to do is to start adding equipment. So to do that, you click this plus equip button here, and when you do so you get to the add new equipment form. And this form has on your left here the target FL, as I mentioned before on the list. This is where the equipment is going to go, or this is where the equipment is. So say for example, if you have an electric motor that goes onto sea cooling pumps or something, then you would choose in hierarchy that will go all the way down to sea cooling pumps, and then you would add a motor and assign that motor to the functional location that is sea cooling pump motor. So when you look at the list, you'll see that okay, yes, I have a motor brand ABB whatever, and it's the one that goes onto the sea cooling pumps. You also have information of who is heading. This is the logged in, the current user. This is the date, the current date. This is where what's going to be stored in the system as the date that basically the equipment was added. Then you have the current status. Now this is important because When you first add an equipment to Comma CMMS, you tell Comma CMMS where the equipment is and what it's doing. From that point onwards, so from the moment the equipment is added all the way to setting it as inactive, the system will record the basically where the equipment is at any given time, and then you can go and get that information at a later time. So this is very powerful. So you can see the full history of an equipment, of a motor, for example. You see, for example, that okay, in the example we're going to do now, we'll say that I just bought the equipment. I just bought a new motor, and it's actually a spare, and it's going to go on in storage. So I'll select the in storage. If this was to go directly into service, or if I am just catching up on all the information and inputting all the information in Comma CMMS, and this particular unit was in service, then obviously I'll select in service here. But okay, we'll start by let's imagine that I bought a new motor and I bought it as a spare. So it started as in storage, and because it arrived to our facility today, we're going to choose, and today is 16th of January, so we're going to choose today, and this is telling the system that the the motor has been in storage since the 16th. Then on this section here, you can set the type of spare we are talking about. If it's a filter element, something that is designed to be replaced every once in a while, something that you cannot service, something that you take out and throw away, then you would select it as a consumable. But in the case we're talking about here, we're talking about an electric motor, a large electric motor. It's definitely not a consumable, because most times this can be serviced either in-house or by somebody else, but actually it can be serviced, so it's not a consumable. Then here we have the container option. I will not go through containers right now. I will do that in another video. For now, we will not select container for the electric motor. Then we just have to add a brand. Actually, if we don't, then the system will tell you that you need to add a brand. So this is Siemens, serial number 1233, just some number. And for model, we just go for the H1 electric motor. And here you have some free text. This is nice. For example, if you want to put PR number 1234, basically whatever you put on this field is then searchable with the search console. So it depends on what information is important for you. There are cases where we put PR numbers and other cases where we specify a better description or a more detailed description than we get from the functional location here. So we put C water pumps, I don't know, just something here. Your organization can select some kind of standard for what text gets inputted here, so you can create your own tags and then search by those tags. If, for example, you wanted to get all the motors, you'd go motors here or motor. So when you input an electric motor, you need to make sure that you include this tag, and then if you are searching for electric motors, you can go to the search console and look for this tag, and then it will search on this field and display all electric motors that you have tagged as such. Then we keep going. We have the purchasing and financial information for the motor. So the first thing you see here is that it says that you need to select a plant. Now, a selection of the plant is done through the functional location hierarchy. So let's just choose this one in this example, and actually I'll go down more and we'll choose automation, and we'll go down a little more, and we'll just choose none over here, just for example. And then we come down here. So as you can see, the option of select plant in this area here has changed to MOP, because it went to get the currency, the current defined currency for the location of the plant. So you need not do anything else in here. The owner department will just say, okay, it's under this plant is the maintenance department, department. The unit price is okay, it says 70,000. The last purchase date is today. The currency is same as planned, because what can happen is you can buy this from in another country, so this could be in US dollars, for example, while the currency for the plant is MOP. So in here you'd be able to select if this price here is in MOP or USD or HKD or whatever currency you're using, and in here you can select the supplier. So we'll go and select it like that, and you can also add more suppliers in there, but I'm not going to go through that now. Okay, this is where you set the current quantities, the minimum quantity. The minimum quantity is important because when the current quantity is equal or below the minimum quantity, then you must buy a new equipment, or at least you need to do something about this, because you are under minimum quantity in stock. So this is quite important. The order quantity is you typically, for an electric motor, you would buy only one, so this is what is your default order for an electric motor in this case. If you are buying disposable filters, for example, this might be 24 instead of 1, but okay, we'll keep with the example and we'll put 1 in here. The quantity unit, if you over here, it says meters or pieces, and in this case it's a piece. Minimum quantity, actually I want to have always okay, I can afford to have no item in stock, and the current quantity is 1 for this particular system. And this is store location. We just go, all right, this is in room A, shelf B, and in section 1. Okay, now this is where you can upload an image if you'd like, or a link to an external file. So let's do that. I'm going to open another see so many comma CMMS information here. Okay, so we'll go to images.google.com, and we're going to look, just as an example, we'll look for electric motor. So we'll go do that. Okay, and a large industrial motor. So we'll go over here, view image. This is just an example, so it's just to show you what you can do, and that this image can be linked to that product or to that equipment properties page. So the way to do that is you simply copy and paste the information over here. Okay, and we are ready to save the information of this equipment onto the system. So you click add, and when you do that, as you can see, it has linked the image. And by the way, if you have image that have a certain detail and you can zoom in, it will zoom into the image. I think this is a nice feature. It will tell you up here in green where it currently is, and it's in storage in room A, shelf B, and section 1. It will give you a QR code which you can then print and stick on any area here, really, and then use a QR code reader to direct you directly to this page, actually, which gives you all the information you need about this piece of equipment. Then just a little more detail. It has been added on this date by me, so everything that happens to the equipment will then add on to this log table, so you know the history of the equipment at all times. So okay, this is it for a discrete equipment. Now let's go back to the equipment and tools. I'd like just to show you another thing, which is the containers, because the containers are quite important. Let's add another motor quickly, which will go on to the same position. So we'll just choose something and okay, so it's in storage. Actually, this one will be in service, and because I'm starting today, but I know that it's been in service since December 2013, we'll do that, and it's not a consumable, it's not a container. We'll go through that. That's why actually I'm making this second one, because after this I will make use of containers, and this case it's Siemens as well. Of of course a different serial number. Model, I forgot what I wrote. There we go, the H1 electric motor. This is a motor, sorry, this is a motor, so put the motor tag in there. And then, okay, we'll go on. It's already selected, change department, so we'll just put maintenance department. Let's purchase date. Okay, for this particular unit we'll just say that it was purchased in November 2013. It cost a little bit less, it cost 65,000. Same supplier, and we come down a little bit more, and because this is still 1, the minimum quantity will be 0, the order quantity will be 1, the quantity is P, the quantity type or unit is piece, and this doesn't really matter because it's in service at the moment, so we don't really care about it. It could be useful in some cases too, even though that particular equipment is in service somewhere, but you know that you have it, you know, like a store location that is pre-assigned to this type of equipment, and you could fill it in here, but I'm not going to do that right now. Now this is exactly the same motor that we saw before, so I'm going to assign the same picture to it, and we're gonna see this. Okay, so there's the other one. So we've got equipment 66 and equipment 67 as motors of the same type that will actually go onto the same functional location. Now the problem is you can track equipment one by one, so you can know, as I said before, by going over here to view log, you can know later when more items are added to the log list, you can know what happened to each particular equipment. But sometimes, actually a lot of the times, you want to look at your inventory, at your stock, and you want to see you don't really care about each particular equipment. You just want to know if you have a motor that can go on to that position. You don't care if it's serial number 237767 or another one. You just want to know if you have one. So this is where containers come in, because this procedure that we just took lets you define and track what happens to each individual equipment. But when you take a look at the whole group of motors of the same type, and by that I mean motors that will go on to the same functional location, then you need to be able to group the two motors that we've just added onto a single entity, which is what containers are. So let's go back to equipment and tools now that we've created these two motors, and we'll follow the exact same procedure. We'll create plus equipment. We'll say the same thing as we've said before. We'll put them in there, in the same position, so whatever, just something in there. And then here it doesn't really matter what you're going to do in here, because actually a container only looks at items that are in storage. The container is only concerned whether or not a certain equipment type exists in stock or not. So in fact, when you select the container option over here, you'll see that these ones go gray and you cannot select them anymore, because a container, by defining an equipment as a container, it makes only sense to think of it as in storage. We are looking at how many items of that type, and by items of that type I mean items that will go on to a certain functional location that we have in stock. So this allows us to control stock of that type of item. So here, to be honest, you don't really need to put anything, or you don't need to care, just put the date of today. You also can see that the serial number text field here has been grayed out, and actually you can't do anything with it, because it doesn't make sense to think of serial numbers or container serial numbers. A container is in itself a collection or a group of equipment that, or a group of equipments that they themselves, the equipments, they have serial numbers, not the container itself. But okay, so that you cannot fill in, but this you can. And okay, let's say actually this is going to be sea water pump motors in general, and okay, this is going to be these H1 motors. Description, I'm not going to write anything, this will only serve as a container, as a group. Okay, so even none of this really matters for a container. So you are free to you know, use these fields however you'd like. For example, for the unit price, we put one at 65,000, the other one at 70,000, I believe, or 75,000. In here, you know, you can just put an average of the amounts inside, but you might also not care, because it's the equipment itself that really matters in here. So last purchase date also doesn't matter. Now, as you can see, the storage location is not a container property. It is an equipment property, and the equipment that is inside that container. So that gets grayed out, and you can't really do anything on the container level. The current quantity, it doesn't make sense if you have to fill in something in here, because the current quantity is actually calculated from the quantities of the equipment that is placed inside this container. So you can't really do anything in here. And in fact, if you forget about it, you can always over the mouse over here. No, where is it? There. And it says this field is automatically calculated if item is marked as container, which it is. That's why this is automatically calculated. So then minimum quantity, say for this type of equipment, I want to always have one minimum in stock. Okay, this also is a little bit irrelevant for a container, but let's say, okay, I want a quantity of 1 and piece. Okay, then you can choose to also, actually I'm going to use the same picture exactly. So we've just created, I clicked the add button, and I've just created the container, and as you can see, the system will tell you it's a container by displaying this label and image here at the top. Okay, so we've let's summarize. We have 2 motors of each type, which is equipment 66 and equipment 67, and then we have created a container, equipment 68, and what we're going to do now is we're going to place the equipment 66 and equipment 67 onto this container. The way to do that is by going back to the equipment and tools list, and we will have to look for the equipment, basically. So because you don't start from the container and tell what equipment goes onto the container, you go to the equipment and say, I want this equipment to go onto a certain container. So let's do that. Let's find the equipment on the list, and I know that these are the last ones I added, so I can come over here to the end of the list, and you can go and, okay, like I said, I added 66 and 67. So let's go inside the properties view of item 66, and there we are. And then here you can't really do anything, you need to go to edit. So you go inside edit on equipment 66, and when you do that, it's gonna load. It's a little bit slow. Okay, so you can edit the information, you can change things that we've added before, but okay, let's assume that everything is correct. And the most important thing of all is we want to scroll down here, and we want to go to this section here, inventory, and as you can see, there's this option that shows up in the edit page for each equipment. So it says select container action. So when placed on a container, as you can see here for the hint, when placed on a container, the current equipment quantity will default to 1. So yes, like I said, because all the quantities of equipment that are inside the containers, this is all calculated automatically. So as you can see, the current container is currently not inside any container, so we're going to place it inside. There's only one container in the system. If we had more, the list would be longer in here, but in this case we only have item 68 we've just added. So we're going to place this motor onto this container. Okay, and okay, that's it. So we're going to add it, and the equipment, we'll go to the display page of the equipment, and you can see, actually it's up here, that is on container 68. Okay, so equipment 66 is now placed on container 68. So now we go back to the list, the equipment list, because we still have equipment 67 that we would like to place inside that container. So we'll repeat the same procedure for that equipment. So let's go, where was it? Okay, so one important thing, you see that when I first went to this list, there was an equipment 66. That equipment 66 is now gone because it has been placed inside this container. And by the way, this is how you tell that an item is a container, because it shows you the container box over here. By default, this option in the search selection box is selected. So by default, the list will show you only containers. It will not show you the elements, the equipment that has been placed in a container. If you want to see everything, so containers and elements that have been placed inside containers, you uncheck this option, you run the search query. Okay, so we know we can go to the last page, or actually the one before last, and okay, we have 68 as a container as we had before. And if we go to the previous page down here, what you see is item 66. Now it shows, and it shows up on the list, and as you can see, it's been identified as inside a container. And then if you hover over here, it says container content, and if you click, you go to the container that that has this device, this equipment on it. Okay, so but like I was doing, we still need to add item 67 to the container. So we follow the same procedure. We go over here and we place it inside container 68, and we edit the information, and there we go. So now equipment 67 is inside container 68 as well. Now it's very handy to have a quick link to the container. So what we are going to do is we're going to visit the container 68 page. There we go, here, and you can see the container contents. So we have defined, and it has calculated everything by itself. So we have defined one of the motors as being in storage and the other motor is in service. So to the container's eyes of that type of motors, we have one in service and another one in storage. If you want to know more about this, you can go inside, and it will tell you that item 66, so the serial number one, blah 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 blah, this one here, is in storage currently, and 67 is in service. Okay, from here, as we have done before, we can go to each individual page and see what's happening with the container contents. If you come over here, actually, because we have not manipulated any container content, we don't have any other information in the logs, but we will once we start using work orders to manage equipment and to inform or to tell the system where the equipment is. So I will finish this how-to video at this point, and my next video, or in my next video, I will go through all the steps that you need to take to tell, like I was saying before, tell the system what is happening to your equipment through the use of work orders. So we will probably follow this examples that we have. So we would have a container 68 and then two motors placed inside it, and we will service some of the motors, and then we will see what happens and how the information is logged. So you will see that you will have a complete history of what has happened to all your equipment from the moment you buy them to the moment that you dispose of them. I hope you liked it, and I see you in the next video.